The weary traveler draws close to the end of the path.
We have never had it so good.
All of this just works.
We are selling tea to China.
You did not have to redeem this, ma'am!
Out with them, forget about them.
Your broadcast is very biased. You've written a lot of ridiculous articles, so I would encourage you to be more journalistic and have more integrity.
Socialism is when the government does stuff.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Longhouse, the almost bi-weekly show now for the sensible centrists. It's been a hectic May for us here at the Longhouse, but it's good to be back as always. Ludwig Path, how are you doing?
Hello, good to be back. Paying off my consumer loan for the Bunad. And
yes.
Yeah, I guess we I don't know if you did a community post, but maybe we owe the audience an apology for the rescheduling, and we could just tell them about the new schedule.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Yeah, so for those of you who are observant, you'll notice that we're streaming half an hour late, and going forward, we'll probably be streaming an hour later than we were, which means that if you live in like Central Europe, it's no longer 8 p.m. It'll be 9 p.m. Mostly just to sync, bedtime stuff for the kids. Something about like summer makes it really hard to put them to bed at a reasonable hour, and so to avoid the stress, we just postpone it one hour, and then we don't have to annoy you guys by being late or having to like do micro adjustments here and there.
Putting it this way, the kids don't respect daylight savings time, so that makes it difficult. And just as a pro-natalist logistical change, we're just going to do the show an hour later from now on. It won't be a big inconvenience to most people, considering they might not even watch live. And if we have international viewers, I think it's even better. So
I think for the Americans, it'll make it easier, at least. So yeah, I mean, if you want to watch this live, we of course appreciate that. And we love all of our live watchers and listeners equally, of course. Okay, I think that's enough PSA. Let's get right into what we have intended. It's going to be a bit of a catch-up, just because we have been away for a bit. There's some things that we wanted to cover, something that we were early on, actually, which is fun, when it comes to the Party for Peace that we covered, which was a bunch of like old tankies who we suspected were funded by, Russia-aligned interests, and it seems like we were right. But we'll get back to that.
Yeah, it's a bit of a shame we missed last week, because it would have been a nice continuity episode, right? I think we were early with the Party for Peace and Justice, headed by Mr. Glenn Thiessen. But of course, yeah, they broke into the mainstream. They were invited onto the debate show on like Norwegian state broadcasting. Did a debate. I don't think anybody came well out of it, but my view on that party, on Glenn Thiessen, on that entire, let's just say, Russia Alliance sphere, is essentially, they win by timeout, in a sense. I look at them as the people on, say, an insurance agency. They're going to have a lot of people on payroll whose job it is to stall customers as much as possible from taking the claims back, right? So they will ask you about stuff like, if you have like a death certificate for your past father, or they will ask you for forms that don't exist, make you run around the building 2 times and do all kinds of stuff, hoping that you'll just kind of give up getting your claim back. And with types like these, and I feel like their role is essentially at this point. I feel like it's just the same. It's just okay. Just let's just stretch the dialogue out or whatever. Let's just make people waste time listening to them, and you never get that time back. But and
it certainly
maybe,
does match
yeah.
with we've talked about earlier. The pattern that Russia has for information warfare is very much throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks, or just the shotgun method, right? And this certainly feels like it aligns with it, whether or not the people involved in the actual party have anything to do with Russia at all. It just feels like if we can distract you with this for like 10 minutes, that's worth it, right?
Yeah, no, I think it worked. I mean, what's that woman's name? I forget the. Let's see.
Oh, you mean the
beneath the Decent there, because she has the woman that's like the head of the party, who's Maria Lärland,
yeah.
who no, sorry, Marielle, that's her name actually.
Oh, Marielle Lurland,
yeah. She is. That woman's like a true believer in a sense. I think a lot of those people in the party are just. I've seen them on Twitter posting. They're absolutely sincere, like completely true believers in that cause. Mostly just due to being a part of that kind of that sphere of media, in a sense. I mean, with Deason, he's more sort of deeply embedded within like those networks, but like for those people, it's really, they genuinely think that like everything the West does is bad, right? Every time the West does anything, it's bad, and
we shouldn't
the more
do
the West uses, the better it gets for Palestine. Essentially, that's kind of the
exactly, yeah.
Which is
it's a very strange. It feels like that Stone Toss comic where you're like the tug of war, and you're looking at who's on your side tugging, and it's like, wait, what's going on here, right? It's one of those. It's something we've talked about a lot ever since we started the Longhouse. That once you step outside the Overton window, you really have to, watch the next steps you're taking. Otherwise, you just become a retard, essentially.
Yeah, the consistency, I think, of this sort of like who's on your side, who's the friend, and who's the enemy, and who do you trust. It really has become, what do you call it? Like this term, like the tectonic shifts. Like I said, like it's really not solid anymore. I felt like it was solid from. Yeah.
We're already so deep into this. I might as well just bring up the article we were going to cover about this, because shifting gears now is just going to make it confusing. So this is. I think this is like a right-wing adjacent website, like a news outlet in Norway.
Well, this is Helge Lurås'
exactly.
website, right? So,
I was going to say, I think it's
previously
website. Document?
I don't know. It's not Document, because that's an entirely different franchise. But he had another site. There was supposed to be this newspaper. I did an episode on it, and I've already forgotten the name of it. Time really flies.
Oh yeah. Hang on. Let's figure out what it was. Oh wow. Why is this so difficult to
Reset? That was
Reset?
The name of it.
Yeah. Reset was his last.
That was sort of like the prototype of trying to do alt media in Norway, and it went down like the Hindenburg, of course. And then he just put this one up that's really closer to a sort of blog, where it's a very low overhead operation, where he just reposts stuff from Twitter most of the time. But
and he has other people like this guy can sort of just mail him, I guess, articles, and they'll get posted.
Yeah, right? I think the Asbjørn guy who's doing all of these interviews, he's like kind of the rising star of this website. It's the greatest asset that they have in terms of relevancy. But other than this, it's it's kind of the same that Reset was supposed to be. It's just without all of the overhead and trying to bring in as many people, because it's just, I mean, if not to go on too many asides, but like doing this sort of consolidated conglomerate media in this kind of alt news environment, it seems like a failing formula. It's failing for the Daily Wire, right? Because they're moving towards bankruptcy, and it failed for like Tim Pool was trying to do something like this, and he had to sort of sell the companies. So it seems like everybody who's approaching this and thinking that we're going to make this kind of serious media organization they're just wasting money on overhead, really, when they just need a webcam and a microphone, and they can just sit and make stuff up and do commentary, really, with almost no overhead. But they're just, because they're insisting on like hiring people for editing, and like it's just completely unnecessary. And most of the time, the people doing that don't have the skill set for it either. So it's it is the dying model, at least in these spheres.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just going to read this. You can just interrupt me when you feel like it. This is an opinion piece by some guy called Marius. The translation machine is being funny here. His name is called Luckin, which means loop. It's just saying that it's calling him a loop, which is funny. All right. What happens to a society's freedom of expression or expression space when a war rages far away, but the fear and rhetoric strikes at home? The reactions to the Party of Peace and Justice, its profiles, and the messages they promoted have triggered a startling rage in the Norwegian public recently. In a recent podcast conversation between Ola Aspen and Ness, who we have covered before, big bearded fellow, and Helge Luros, which is the owner of this website.
Yeah, that's him, Ola Aspen Ness. That's the guy. I think he's like carrying this entire website by himself at this point.
Which the paper will soon release. They reflect on the conditions of freedom of expression in Norway today and how moral panic is reflecting of institutional conformity and increasing distrust that characterize our social climate. A triggering event for the debate is that the Party for Peace and Justice had election posters. He says glued here, but essentially this was a pretty big campaign. Like, it's not like the way he's using the words here is that he's saying that there's some sort of like Antifa, some guy like put up like 3 posters. No, this was like a targeted ad campaign that took up official ad space on the subway, right? And I believe generally costs about like 1 million kroner at least. So I just want to be clear that this was an ad campaign, not election posters, election posters as a full-on ad campaign on our national holiday, where it basically said stuff like, stop spending money on Ukraine, etc., etc. It sparked a lot of indignant protests on Facebook from high-profile politicians. Members of the Green Party went around tearing down the posters, and it was applauded by supposedly sane liberal people. And this is what I mean when, because they brought a lot of these people on the debate show to argue for and against with the Party for Peace and Justice, and it really just got into like 2 retards fighting territory where, some like green guy is just shouting insults at them, and this Marielle woman is just playing stupid, or she might just actually be stupid, considering, you said she's a true believer. I believe she's a true believer, but in that lies a certain degree of stupidity that she seems to just be unable to fathom sort of the insults being hurled at her, like why people would be upset with this. She's not even like playing the hatchling. It just seems like she doesn't understand why people disagree with her.
Well,
anyway.
Yeah, she is sort of a true believer. I sort of very long time in the general idea that everything the West does in terms of intervention anywhere is bad, and it should never have been done. Like the West might as well not have existed at all, and it can never do anything right. What I was thinking of when I was watching this debate, because Fredrik Solvang, who is the host, he did this sort of prefacing. I don't know, like the correct English term of it, where it's like, well, sure, just because you have a loud voice and just because you're doing the stunt doesn't mean we should get media time, but we're doing it anyway. So, I just thought what echoed in my head was like, the arc of modern media is long, but it eventually ends up at Piers Morgan Uncensored. Right? And that's...
I feel like the debate show really has become more of a show, yes.
Yeah,
than a debate.
This is what I'm thinking, like Piers Morgan Uncensored, not because it's sort of because Piers Morgan is, explicitly pro-Russian or anything like that. But just having that dynamic of having like this sort of Vatnik types come in and scream at other people is like very good television. And you can't resist the temptation in terms of eyeballs of just, okay. I mean, like the function of these, like, the Vatnik types is essentially just to waste time. I talked about this before, like if it's like Dave Smiths or the Scott Hortons or like whoever, the Posebics or something they bring on the show, they're just there to waste time. They're screaming and shouting at each other and nothing comes of it. But it's a win for them essentially, because they just get screen time for this, and the audience wins in terms of, it's entertaining, but it's just not very useful. In a sense that even if you are, Piers Morgan is not, he has taken like more of this anti-Russian, pro-Ukrainian position. He's still, his entire show, I think, in my view, sort of functions more as just like more of like a pro-Russian show, simply because the amount of people he brings on, and just the amount of screen time that they get. That's just my view of it, but. Yeah. Not to segue too much. We'll get back to the article again.
For Ness, the host of the podcast, this is a signal of a serious weakening in respect to freedom of expression. Quote, the liberalism and tolerance is going to become varnished then, is the expression he's using. He highlights a future where such clashes can turn physical. Quote, it's not difficult to imagine that that this situation degenerates into fights between those who say that you should leave the posters up versus those who indignantly say that they will tear down the posters. So what he's communists and fascists fighting in the streets, I guess, is what he's getting at. Luros says that the reactions as expressions of society operating on a logic of war, and describes the psychological state where normal freedoms are suspended. So he's essentially arguing that while it's not explicit, we are allowing, I guess, the sort of total war state to operate like that, with, what's that called when it's like state of emergency laws, right?
Yeah, that's martial law, I guess.
Martial law is what he's hinting at. Even though we're not sort of in martial law, he's saying that psychologically we're operating with martial law mode of thinking. Quote, what we're now witnessing is how a society reacts when experiencing an existential threat. One becomes extremely concerned with silencing oppositional voices. Now, I mean, just purely objectively then, right? Shouldn't that be true? Like, whether or not it's actually true, right? And we can get back to that later. If we suspect that a foreign country is trying to influence our elections, whether or not we agree with, the status quo, shouldn't it be the nation's sort of right almost to be able to just like do whatever then, right? Just to have that reaction.
Yeah.
What's the point of emergency powers or an emergency state of mind if you never use it?
Yeah, generally you'd think so, and there's of course this tension there always, but especially in the West with how liberal do you want to be, contrary to more information?
Is it Karl Popper or whatever, the tolerance of intolerance or whatever. Yeah.
Paradox of tolerance, or even if you want to look at like the sort of Carl Schmittian interpretation of how that is supposed to work. Because I mean, on the other hand, you have these other countries, say like Russia or China or something, where that the information space is airtight, more or less inside of those countries. There's no kind of non-approved opinions that are ever going to go on TV. But so you then ask yourself like the questions of, okay, how far do you want to go? How draconian do you want to get? But of course, in this case, it's just kind of not true, because they got the TV space. They got really more attention than really was warranted, in my view.
Yeah, I mean, the money for the ad campaign really got them far, right?
Well, I'm not saying that you should tear down their posters. It seemed like they paid for it, and it was done legally. Although I suspect it's going through a sort of command chain within certain networks, and I don't really advocate for property damage. But what it looks like to me is that, well, there was kind of no need to bring them on TV, but they did it anyway. I feel like they've gotten so much promotion out of this. That,
that's what I'm saying. They got a lot of mileage out of that campaign, right?
Yeah, that you can make. Oh, we're being silenced. Are they?
No, they're being platformed.
Not very well.
Right?
They sound pretty loud to me, to be honest. I'm hearing and seeing them everywhere. So I'm not sure they're being silenced. But this is like this sort of typical thing where you're reading these like Norwegian or these sort of oppositional media things, where they like to talk about the cancel culture and this kind of stuff, even though the stuff that they talk about is more accepted now than it ever has been. You see the same thing with the document or these. Where now it's state supported, right? Document, the news company, they're getting state funding to continue to do this, and they're talking more about being censored than they ever have. So I think it's a bit of a gimmick with these people to always run to this sort of like we're being censored or this stuff, even though it's kind of not the case. And
certainly there are countries out there who are more draconian on this stuff than Norway, right? Like, I mean, do we want to talk about this? Like, Morgoth got doxxed by Hope Not Hate, who's state sponsored, right? In the UK, and Norway isn't really in that position. So yeah, you have to live in the world you live in, and not like the weird online Twitter world where everything, sucks and you're always being oppressed, right?
Yeah, I mean, you see that we could have probably done like a compilation of some of the people in the spheres, but like in the sort of Scandinavian sphere, who are on there complaining about things,
American problems,
which
or something.
This kind of pretend Americanism that they're engaged in. Which, I mean, of course, I mean, you have the right to complain, but a lot of the stuff they bring up is it's bordering on completely nonsensical. So. But
sure.
Let's just finish the article.
Let's keep going.
Move on to something
draws parallels between society and military hierarchy, because he's a former military guy. Once a decision is made, the subordinate has to follow orders. Ness believes that this conformity permeates large parts of society, not least the business sector. The most woke thing that exists and the least tolerant is very much part of the business world. Those are the most politically correct idiots, I guess is what he says. Now, it should be said that, Ness is, I think, one of Norway's strongest, like he's one of Israel's strongest soldiers, right, here in Norway. So he has a really sort of a bone to pick with woke in the sort of Israel-Palestine angle. Let's see here.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this before. It's a kind of being super pro-Israel is a sort of contrarian position to take in many European countries. I think Norway, Spain, Ireland, Netherlands are probably some of the worst. If you have like the super pro-Israel position, I mean, you could have the position, but that's not considered mainstream, not because of some like based Hitlerist reason, but generally because either from like the center to the left, it's some degree of either humanitarian concerns for Palestinians that seem to trump Israel support, and in general just not enough Jews in the right positions to change that.
And of course, Jews / Israel, has historically had a bit of a rough time with Norway, and to this day considers us one of the like least Jew-friendly places in the world, even though we haven't really done anything against the Jews for quite a while on a sort of national level, right, other than tell them to stop doing what they're doing in Gaza. So they tend to call us anti-Semites quite a lot for like pretty much no apparent reason other than geopolitical ones.
Well, yeah, they're a quite high maintenance group at this time, right? You're seeing, what's happening in the United States, where the Trump admin is deporting students who are criticizing, they're doing like these anti-Israel protests, right? And that seems to be the benchmark for what they are expecting. Like it's not enough that you don't do anything to them. You have to actively root out the people who don't like them in that country.
But the thing is, on like a national level, like Norway has no sort of no more disagreement with Israel and the Jewish people than we have with like the Romani, right? It's just that we're so naive in our belief that, if you're going to live here, you're going to have to, believe in our liberal state, right? And some people don't do that. They do in-group preference, and we don't enjoy that.
Yeah, well, I mean, you do have a certain part of the political class that are hardcore Palestine people.
A slight part of it, but I don't believe they're dominant in any way. You're talking about like the hardcore left, essentially.
Yeah, I think they're in a sense have more of a voice in Norway. They're not actively being pushed out like you're seeing in the United States, where like that's
fair. Yeah,
being like that is just off the pale.
They're
right?
still allowed to be a part of the conversation. That's fair.
So I mean, it is a growing contingent as well in the United States. You're seeing in the Democratic Party, with like the younger people are probably quite strongly pro-Palestine. Where it's kind of like more of these old.
But that's like a global
types.
trend. Like people just and not even like, and that's where it gets weird, because that's the thing with like separating Israel as a Jewish state and the Jewish people, because they keep confusing it as well, right? That when the stock for Israel falls globally because they're acting mean, right? And the young people don't really have any history of having to support them. They start doing that like the Mott and Bailey thing, where it's like, well, if you don't support Israel, you're an anti-Semite. And it's like, no, that's not what we're saying, right?
Yeah, I think especially, lately they seem to be in a bit of a spiral towards, they become more extreme, and then they get attacked, and then they get more defensive, and they get more extreme. So it's difficult to see sort of in the future who are going to be their biggest support players. But I guess they'll have to pivot to more, brown countries like India and
probably,
countries like that to try to help.
AI generate some more alliance.
I mean, in a sense, it's like, yes, people don't like Israel, but there's a sort of there's a sort of the business case for it, where some people are just kind of cynical and say that, okay, we can trade with them kind of behind the scenes while we condemn their actions on the sort of humanitarian level. So like Erdogan, and there's a lot of these leaders in the Middle East who are like that, right? They'll do some posing about like pan-Arabism or global Islamism or whatever, but behind the scenes they're still engaged in trade and relations with Israel. Like that's always going to be there. It is like a high, what do you call it, like a sort of high human capital country, very, very small country, but it has a lot.
We need the processors and the CPUs,
money and defense tech, right?
Yeah.
It's not to be underestimated. I've sort of not thought that much about it, but they do deliver a lot of startup.
They do have a lot of very technology. High, like specific technical stuff they deliver.
Technical, like cybersecurity, for example, it's like huge in Israel. I wasn't aware of that, but they do deliver services to a lot of the top like cloud providers, say like Amazon and Microsoft Azure, and they use Israeli tech as sort of general like AI
state-of-the-art golem technology.
AI like DDoS protection and stuff, because in Israel they train up their kids from a very early age to be in the military, and a part of that is cybersecurity training. So a lot of them come out with very deep experience in the cybersecurity, not just theoretical, but like because they're actually being attacked. Generally, they have practical experience as well. So
now they did have a moment recently where all their high tech stuff didn't prepare them for three guys on a flying scooter or whatever it was. So you can't just like tech your way out of stuff, but they're at least very good at it.
Yeah, no, just yeah. Of course, faults always happen, but generally, I mean, they have they're sort of a larger provider of more kind of specialized security and military tech services to the rest of the world, and that's something that's always going to be in demand, right? No matter how you feel about them, like just to being able to, okay, they can sell you certain tech that you need for military, and they have a lot of money, so it just becomes more of like a realpolitik consideration at that point. But yeah, the Israel stock is falling, at least from a humanitarian perspective.
Yes. All right. Let's see if we can keep going for this. I've spoken to some people who work quite high up in our defense ministry and intelligence services. There's now a perception that the right thing to do is to fight against Russia and to do it in Ukraine. Well, I do believe that's been the belief since the start of the war, hasn't it? I mean, I've said, as callous as it sounds, realpolitik geopolitically, the best thing for a country like Norway to do if we don't want to be invaded by Russia is to have them grind on Ukraine for as long as possible, right? And that sucks for Ukrainians, but that's just the way it is, right?
Yeah, I don't know exactly. I mean, you can come with the arguments you don't like war, you don't like what's going on, and
yeah, I don't like war either,
or whatever. But
I didn't attack Ukraine, right?
The alternatives that are sort of on the table, like the stuff that this party is proposing, you know, for peace and justice or whatever, it's like, let's just not have a military and just spend the money on welfare. Like,
yeah, but that's the thing. Like, if you remember back to the episode we did, a lot of the things that Ford talk about in isolation are interesting, but when you layer them like they do, it's essentially a surrender plan, right? To whomever wants to come first, right?
So it is essentially, okay, what do you see as an alternative? And the only alternative that's on the table right now is basically, okay, you just let Russia do whatever they like. That's essentially what that is the real position that people like Deason represent. And especially if you look at the trajectory that all of this Trump-Russia negotiation nonsense has taken, you know, it's gone nowhere. Because a lot of the people like Deason and Dave Smith and these people are talking, well, you know, if we can just get in leadership in the West who are friendly towards Russia and will, you know, oh, we just need to talk, we just need the diplomacy and well, I mean, they really have rolled out sort of the carpet and tried to, let's just be friendly and we'll, you know, if you give us this, we give you that. And nothing's happened. Nothing's come of it. Absolutely. It's just been a total waste of time. And that's why I come back to the metaphor of like the insurance agent who's just trying to stop you from collecting your premium on your insurance. And they'll just say whatever they have to say to keep you stuck on the phone, just to grind you down and make you tired of the whole process. And I think that should just be like, you have two options. You either just let Putin do whatever he likes and just pray that it doesn't get worse, or you can support Ukraine militarily and try to just grind them down there. That's just the only two options.
Yeah, exactly. That's really, literally, you know, objectively the only two choices you have, right?
So ideally, I'd like to see like a full, you know, EU European Renaissance, European rearmament or whatever. But it like that just doesn't look like it's happening anytime soon. They're really not in a hurry to do this, in spite of all like the meme edits of you know, Mother Europa or whatever. European leadership just do not look like they just don't want to take risks, essentially.
Sure.
And if you want to give like the Russians anything, it's like they've really shown that they're willing to take the pain on this more than anything. It's really quite remarkable how much the pain they've been willing to take to have this continue, and really just bet the farm on the fact that Europe is not going to have an awakening. It's not going to organize, and the United States is just going to continually spiral. And that's been a strong bet. It's quite like they have to take so many hits on the chin, but it's worth it because you know, the West is just going to kind of collapse in on itself. It's very sad, but so far that's what it seems like. And the only thing that I think is going against Russia's favor is stuff like the oil price, for example, like the general dropping of the price of oil, which is almost like half of what it was when the war started. So it's just becoming more and more expensive for them to run the war in the long run. And like that is the only kind of counterpoint. Otherwise, it seems like to me like the Russians are winning the information war, and they're making advancements, at least very, very slowly, very incrementally in Ukraine. But of course, it gets difficult to maintain, especially if the price is going to continue dropping, if like OPEC falls apart, as it looks like it might, and like the Saudis are just pumping oil, all over the place. So
yeah, we're in for a bit of a rough ride. Hopefully, the thing is that I hope that the leaders of Europe is either going to have their wake up, or they're going to have to be replaced with someone who actually can see the writing on the wall. And at this rate, that might just be like the Tony Blairs of the world, right? But at least if we're lucky, they at least can deal with the world as it is, right? Not as they want it to be. That's some consolation. Bill Wilson says, no reason, he's talking about Israel, no reason they were historically any better of a place to make processors than some place in Western Europe. That's true. But I mean, as we've learned with, the reasons, the US reasons forays into tariffs, it's not like you can just, stop importing processors and they'll just magically appear locally. We have some projects in Norway about like starting up like battery production for lithium batteries and other types of like high-end batteries. And, we're talking about having like a generation of a horizon, like 30 years essentially, to get to a place where we can confidently say that we're like a major provider of battery tech to Europe, right? So it's not like you can just stop dealing with it. Like, so you have to buy your processors from someone, right? And it's either going to be like Taiwan or it's going to be Israel, as it is. You can change it, but what are you going to do for that? Like, what are you going to do if your short term is like 25 years, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure Israel is a microchip provider. Did I miss something, or?
Sorry, what?
I'm not sure if like we're like mixing Taiwan with Israel at this point, like with.
Oh no, yeah, I was mixing it. Sorry, I meant like America, right?
Yeah.
So
but, I mean, yeah, it's not going to be easy for Europe to say replace Microsoft, Amazon, and Google. Exactly. just on the win. Like that's the kind of stuff that we would.
I mean, we can. It's just going to take a lot of time, right?
It's really not easy to make like a better Google or something. It would have to be some kind of government initiative, and even that stuff is like, would be limited in a sense. America seems to have like the perfect fertile ground to create these startups that can scale to like a mass audience and then sort of attach onto government in a way that's very difficult in Europe. Not because of lacking of funds or size or people, but it's just the ability to scale across the continent with a sort of common language, a common purpose, and stuff like that. That's kind of the problem, is that it's too much friction in the markets and legally and stuff. So, and I mean, I've talked about this before as well. Like the people who complain about that would usually, advocate for like, okay, we're going to have less EU, which means there's going to be even more friction because everybody's having like bilateral trade agreements. And so it's not easy to solve. It's going to require like a sort of complete restructuring of Europe, and nobody's going to be 100% happy with the result, whether it's for free speech or tech or whatever. If we have to face that, okay, we're going to have to live without the United States, and we're going to have to defend ourselves against our geopolitical enemies, and it can be accomplished. It's just that I don't think most people will like it.
No, it's going to be rough, right? But I think that's the thing. Like, if we can't trust America anymore, and we don't want to trust anyone else, right? In terms of like, if we don't want to be Russian, right? Then that's the way. The only way forward is through, and yeah. Okay. Do we want to keep on reading this, or should we move on? It's just going
I
to
think
get
we covered
worse.
most of the point. I mean, the article is really more just like what do you call like a little hook or something, because
Sure.
I never found their stuff to be that interesting. We can look at some.
Do we want to talk a little bit about Klarna? I mean, it's
Yes.
been.
I mean, that was also
it's-
last week, but it's too funny not
Yeah.
to at least mention.
Now, I might have some nuance on this that's going to make this less funny, but we got very black-pilled for a moment here, so let's read some Daily Mail from the female section. Apparently, I don't know why this is in like the women section of the Daily Mail, probably because of shopping. Buy now, pay later service Klarna reveals losses as some shopaholics refuse to settle up loans. The Swedish service is growing, but still suffering some financial losses. Shopaholics shared hilarious reactions to the news on social media. Swedish fintech company Klarna is now grappling with some financial losses as customers fall behind on loan payments. The buy now, pay later service is popular for allowing shoppers to split payments into interest-free chunks, but the model is now under scrutiny as some users are unable or unwilling to pay back what they owe. While Klarna's user base showed impressive growth in the first quarter, its net loss for the first 3 months of 2025 was $99 million, they revealed in their latest earnings report. Its first quarter consumer credit losses hit $136 million, marking a 17% increase compared to last year. Now, apparently Klarna claims that this is the same, but it's also an increase, so I'm not quite sure what they mean by that. A Klarna spokesperson told Daily Mail that the increase in losses was proportional to Klarna's overall growth in business volume. This is also something they say, which is just that it's rising as their volume is rising. But I've seen, here it is, delinquency rates are the same as they were a year ago in the U.S. So it's just that the U.S. is more broadly adopting Klarna, seems to be the case. Of course, the Klarna's greatest mistake was investing in a third world country and expecting them to pay back, but that's on them. People online reacted.
I made the joke that like the United States has been degraded on like the Dobbs credit rating. That's like this international rating agency for, and this is about like their government's ability to pay back its debt and the bond yields and so on. But I made the joke that because they can't pay for the burgers, that's why they got downgraded. But I do assume the things go hand in hand at some point, right?
Yeah. People in chat are talking about the Israel technology thing. Yes, I mean we're not saying that we should rely on Israel for all tech. I'm just saying that there is geopolitical reasons why the trade routes exist, and someone on Nudge Unit is talking about moving things too fast, like back to America. You start messing with stuff. Well, yes, I mean that's I guess the chief criticism against the Trump tariff thing is that there's no finesse, right? These things do require sometimes a bit of a scalpel, and Trump is more of a sledgehammer guy, right? Okay.
Yeah, I got the news. He recently got kicked by the Supreme Court on tariffs, so it'll be interesting to see if he's going to go for Kaiser based on history. Based on history of this term, the answer is nothing ever happens. You can bet no on Polymarket. But
Sure.
I guess we could live in hope that maybe he's going to try to defy the court
Maybe
orders.
he'll do a... Yeah, maybe he'll do a... Is it... who was it? I keep forgetting his name. The American president.
It's the Andrew Jackson quote.
No, I was thinking he was going to pull like some... Roosevelt, sorry. Like he was going to pull some Roosevelt stuff, right? Pack the courts and do weird shit. But we'll see.
Yeah, it'll be difficult. But apparently it's sort of... As far as I understand, like the president in the United States can only use tariffs as a form of like emergency. It's like a wartime emergency powers, and the Supreme Court has basically said that no, like trade deficits is not an emergency. It's not a security issue, and so they can't enforce these tariffs. And I think just generally, there's just not enough institutional support to enforce the type of tariffs that Trump wants, sort of across the board. When people are looking at like the price increases and a lot of the complexity that comes with that. So I don't know. That's going to be an uphill battle. I think if he turns that around, that's going to be the only thing he does for the rest of his presidency.
Spend all his energy on that, yeah. People online reacted hilariously to the news, with some shopaholics joking that they may have contributed to the company's losses. I feel so damn guilty, quote. I'm about to pay them this $143, wrote one. I'm not sure if this is like a typo or if, if it's,
I think
like a hidden message. Yeah.
Black
A second one said, I'm glad they denied me. They would have been 136.2 million in debt. I guess that's like adding their stuff. Well, it ain't me. They keep increasing my purchase power, and I'm here for it, gushed another. Let me go lay the $72 I owe them and help them out a little bit, a fourth wrote. One said, let me go ahead and order something before they file for bankruptcy, lol. Another one joked that it looks like Klarna needs to sign up for Afterpay. One responsible spender wrote, you gave credit to people that didn't qualify for credit and you expect them to pay you. Well, see, that's the thing though. At this point, Klarna is essentially just like a huge bank, like a private lender bank. And that gives them a lot of power in the market. Of course, betting that people are going to pay back, but they can just ideally create a bunch of like wage slaves that just pay them back over time. And then you just siphon wealth from...
The problem is that these are interest-free payments. So I don't know what kind of security they take. Like, they can't go and take your burger after you've eaten it. So if like you split your burger up into 4 payments or something, and they are interest-free payment. So it's, I don't know who eats the difference there, is my question. Is it going to be split between the company? Because then you're not making any money on...
you're making some money on the transaction, but you're making way lower than like a credit card company. Like they're making, I forget the numbers, but like say a credit card company takes like 3%, Klarna takes like 1.5, right? So
I'm thinking that they are going for like the market share stuff. It's like they're trying to maximize market share by just offering interest-free payments, and then you can just
then they're going to rug pull their entire base and start hiking the interest.
Yeah, everybody's going to use Klarna essentially. So it's like this kind of unicorn model where
they're Swedish. They're going to do the Spotify thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. Sweden has 2 unicorns now, right?
Yeah.
What do we have? Nothing.
None.
It's
only the bottle caps. That's all we have.
Yeah, we have plastic bags for 8 kroners per bag.
That's what we got. Anyway, one responsible spender. That's what he said. Klarna and CEO and co-founder Sebastian Semiatowski said that he was happy with the company's undeniable momentum in a gushing statement issued in their earnings report. I believe Klarna is looking at like an IPO. So that might also be why they're like eating market shares, right?
Yeah, that's the only at least I think the most logical explanation here. It's like a sort of Amazon, Uber, Airbnb type company that we're just going to try to max out as many customers as possible, get the IPO, sell out, and then you'll try to make some money off it later.
Helio says oil. Well, yes, but I mean we didn't invent oil, but we're really good at getting it out of the ground. I'm not sure if I've probably talked about this before, but at one time I visited Germany, we drove past the like the Red Dot Design Award group. They have like a museum somewhere in Germany, and you can watch like old cars and pretty much everything that's ever won like a design award for ingenuity or just design in general is displayed there. And once you get to like anything that happens underwater, everything is awarded to the Norwegians and like the Canadians. Like if any sort of like technological equipment, if it's used underwater, we figured it out. So yeah, we're good at that stuff.
Yeah, no, I mean what Norway has is essentially state capitalism, right? And I don't mean that in a sort of pejorative sense. I mean like Norway actually has good state capitalist companies that are usually like founded by the state. And the state will sell maybe 50 to 60% of the shares, and they maintain an ownership stake in the company, but they're not involved in like daily operations of it. So you have the sovereign wealth fund. That's an example of that. It is like the largest sovereign wealth fund. I mean, it's called the oil fund in Norwegian, right? But it's the largest sovereign wealth fund in the world. That's sort of this state capitalist thing. Or you have companies like Statkraft, for example. That's like the largest renewable energy company in Europe, which is also a sort of state-funded and then privatized company. And Equinor, and I'm sure you have a lot of other examples of companies.
Yeah,
that
there's
are
a lot of
relatively
there's a lot of
powerful.
interesting innovation happening in Norway in the industry, literally just based on the fact that we're so few people. My experience past couple of years has been a lot about the oil drilling. Okay, yeah. So someone said, didn't the Americans set up all of our oil drilling equipment? Yes, they set it up for us the first time because they know how to drill on land, right? They have some like sea stuff, but they taught us how to drill. We figured out how to do it at thousands of feet below the sea level, right? That's what we did. And because we're so few, we're forced to surpass the Americans on a lot of stuff that requires, human input. So more and more oil rigs in Norway are, more and more automated with, robot hands essentially doing a lot of the dangerous work. Whereas America, you have some poor guy, out there in the middle of the desert, chains flying, cutting off your fingers, cutting off your head if you're not careful, because human capital is cheap, right? And
the oil pump greeter and the oil pump sign spinner.
Exactly.
Paid $2 an hour. Yeah.
They're making a lot of money, but the risks are incredibly high. So I'm just saying that we're forced to innovate in spaces where a lot of other countries aren't, because we're just so few people. So we have a lot of ingenuity that isn't, loud in that sense. Okay. Klarna has reached 100 million consumers and secured exclusive partnerships with major retailers like Walmart through OnePay, teamed up with DoorDash, and expanded our partnership with eBay to the US after multiple successful European launches. Our AI-first strategy is driving what part of Klarna is AI? That's what I want to know. Our AI-first strategy is driving exceptional returns. We're outpacing competitors. Merchant network is scaling rapidly, and our next-gen products are reshaping money management for millions. Maybe it's like back-end stuff is AI.
Well, I think almost any company worth its salt is using AI for something, whether it's like credit checks or like product pricing or something. I mean, yeah, every company is using it for something, especially what it means to be AI first. In their case, I'm not so sure. But go on reading. Maybe I can do a lookup and see if I can find something smart.
A quarter of American adults are using buy now. Hang on. Oh yeah, sorry, I was looking at chat. A quarter of American adults are using buy now, pay later services for grocery shopping. Jesus. I mean, I suppose you are if you're using your credit card for grocery shopping, which can be quite nice. Like I do that sometimes, and you just pay it off when it gets there, right? I think we do. Yeah, I think we use a credit card for all of our grocery shopping because it's hooked up to like this like cashback program that we have in Norway, where you get like a percentage back on everything you spend. So essentially, I'm doing buy now, pay later, if that's the definition, on all of my grocery shopping. A survey of 2,000 adults by loan company LendingTree also discovered that 41% of people who use buy now, pay later services for groceries had missed a payment deadline. Well, Jesus, that's a high amount. 41% of people miss a payment deadline, which I assume that's also where you make some money, right? You get fees if you miss it. 7% more than the year before. The data, first report by CNBC, points to an impending economic doom as millions of ordinary Americans buckle under the weight of soaring grocery prices, with the inflation still untamed. Major supermarkets, including Kroger, Shaw's, Ralph's, and Whole Foods, let customers pay using the most popular buy now, pay later service, Klarna.
That's crazy.
Instacart.
Like they're using, like grocery stores are offering this stuff. Like you can just go buy your expensive like Whole Foods bread or something, and then you have to pay it in 4 payments. Oh wow, that's nuts.
Yeah, it is. It's insane, right?
Because
it's not. I guess this is not just because I was talking like this has to be like not traditional credit card stuff they're talking about, right?
Yeah, no, it isn't, and it's preferable, I think, in the United States because most people use credit cards to some extent, and that's like 10+% interest on in most cases, that would probably be cheap. I've heard all these horror stories about like 20-30% interest.
Sure, yeah.
And, I mean, we listen to these financial shows, like whether it's Dave Ramsey for the boomers, or you have like the Caleb Hammer for like the millennial types. But Klarna is something that comes up over and over again. So there's a lot of footprints of their success in financial failure stories.
Yeah.
Just a quick circling back on the AI.
Here it is. Klarna says financing plans range from 6 to 24 months with interest rates ranging from 0 to 35% APR. So yeah, that's how they make their money. They bank on people not paying. So, but okay, yeah. What do they use AI for? Just looking at the front-facing stuff, customer service is AI driven. Like usually when you talk to people, you're just talking to some bot. They use AI for like shopping recommendations, essentially. Like if you bought this, you want this as well. So they try to upsell you things with AI, and they use AI for like credit risk and figuring out who can actually pay back and how much credit they can offer you just based on your history. So they have some internal back office things as well, but I think that's the things that you're going to be interacting with if you're using Klarna. Yeah, I was thinking maybe there's probably a lot of use cases in their back office stuff. Also, maybe we said they're angling for an IPO, right? You have to talk about AI regardless, right? Just to get people hyped. All right. I think we'll just move on to the next one, and we'll see how long or how far that takes us. Let's see here. Helios talked about we have advanced tech in fishing. Yeah, well, see, that's sort of the thing. Like, I mean, Towson for Björn asked about like the Americans teaching us how to drill, but I mean, we have such a long history of fishing tech and just doing stuff on and underwater that finding the oil below water is like, well, that's not a problem. We'll figure that stuff out. We just need someone to teach us how to drill, essentially. And I'm curious to know, like, alt history, like, would it have been as smooth, quote unquote, if it was the Swedes, right? If the Swedes owned it, if they didn't have the sort of like base industry of just like doing stuff below water, below sea level. I think it certainly accelerated us a bit. Long term, it's the same. You're going to be able to pull the oil up eventually. Brazil is doing it now, but I mean they're so far behind because of that, right? And of course, political instability, etc., etc. It helps being in it. I keep coming back to this at the event in Germany. I was talking to Carl Benjamin, and he at some point said, we were talking about like England and Norway, etc., etc. And he's like, yeah, well, of course you can. You're a nation of 5 million white people. You can do whatever you want. And it's sometimes hard to, I guess, discount that factor. Carl Benjamin Netanyahu. We have. It's like yes and no. I hate to be contrarian on this because I did used to buy into this kind of like just put white people in there, but you have a lot of these. Like say Eastern European countries, former Soviet states that are just kind of a dysfunctional mess, and they're whiter than some of the Northern European countries even. So white people help, but it's not enough. you need to have systems in place as well. I mean, you could look at some places like Romania or Bulgaria or something like that. It's if you know, right? Yeah. Speaking of the systems, some of our systems are currently being besieged by fraudsters, and the Mail, the Royal Mail, I guess, the national Norwegian Mail, is being abused by fraud networks, and ask the police to do more, because 85% of all scam incidents, or I guess scam messages, are ignored by police, or they're sort of what's the word when the police sort of aren't able to follow up on it? Dismissed, I think. Dismissed, I guess, yeah. And the Mail says we can't sit still while our brand is destroyed, according to the communications director. The Mail, the Norwegian Mail is tired.
I think that the brand, because no,
it's a funny saying. Like, they're done, essentially. Like this, they're just done. They're tired of being abused by scammers who, via text message and fake websites, pretend to be them.
Well, it's I mean, this is also a state capitalist company, right? It's just called Bring now. That was formerly like this kind of state mail office, and they have competition. Like, there are private companies because they are logistics company,
which sucks.
Right?
Yeah. I think that's the Swedish one.
These companies are mainly logistics companies, so people are sending less and less letters in the mail, but more packages. So, but in a sense, I mean, it sounds like, okay, well, they're a monopoly anyway, so who gives a shit? But they are, the scammers are using like the state, essentially like the state mail company, and not these kind of smaller PostNord or these competitors.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they're pretending to be, right? Because it has more weight. Let's see here. They told, the paper, the state media had like a report on like inside a global fraud network. But in 7 months, the fraudsters had tricked 19,000 Norwegians into sharing their credit card details, which is quite a lot of people. For relatively low effort, right? You're spear phishing, essentially, right?
Yeah, you got the boomers in there, I assume, and they have money too. That's the funny part.
Yeah, that's the rub.
The easiest to scam probably have the most money. So it is like this untapped market where you just, like, with relatively low effort, if you have some digital competency, you could just scrape accounts. just send these boomers some kind of phishing email about, you missed your packet or something, and they, sure, I'll just log in here. And instead of logging in, they'll just send you, they send the login information to some third party, and then they redirect you to the actual site, and they try to log in again, and then it was nothing. So
yeah, exactly. Post and Bring, which is the name of the company, has now delivered a joint report to the police after 347 fraud attempts. These are just the events from last week, and let me bring up the Norwegian just to make sure that I have the right. This is just the attempts from the last few weeks where the fraudsters has pretended to be us. Our brand is being abused, and we can't sit still and watch it happen. He elaborates. What has come forward through state media reports is that has reinforced our perception of the scope and the organization of this type of fraud. But if police want to do anything with this message is far from certain. Because the police is being essentially run down, bombarded by these messages. Last year, almost 30,000 fraud cases were registered, and this far exceeds the capacity of the police. Of the cases that received an ending or a closure last year, even 85% were essentially dismissed. So of the ones that were, even looked at, 85% of them are just dismissed because you can't just follow up on it. 1/3 of these, the reason was missing or a lack of capacity. In a recent report according to a recent report from the Attorney General, the Attorney General fears that this will also affect the confidence people have in the police, and refers to a recent sort of proclamation made in state media. Trust is a very important driver for to allow the police to be able to do their job, he says. Half a year earlier in October, the sort of like, what would you call this? This is like the financial crimes division of the police launched a new, what they call polished weapon to use against fraudsters, their own fraud. And essentially what they're doing is that they're scam baiting people, I think, scam baiting the scammers into mapping them and fighting back. So
I would not be surprised if they bring in Israeli tech for this stuff, by the way. You talk about like the application of the stuff that they do in Israel. It's like this kind of stuff. I would also not be surprised if like some of the scammers are from Israel. So
Yeah.
I mean that's a bit of an issue, but yeah, you do run into a kind of like workflow problem here, where it's generally the police, as you think of it, it's sort of meant to deal with physical, real world instances of crime, where it's like somebody steals your bike, you have one bike, so they find the person who stole your bike, they get the person back, they get the bike back, and maybe they disperse some punishment, something punitive, and that's the kind of thing that they can deal with. But when you have like a couple of hackers who can send emails to like 1 million people in a couple of seconds, the
behind like
with
7 VPNs from China or something, right?
This is like when if you're working for a software company, you can't deal with if you're like you can't deal with individual instances of support cases if it's at the scale of like 1 million or something. So you basically say that, okay, we're looking into this problem, but you're not going to be able to get back to every one of them. So ideally, you have to have this division where you track down people like this, and they have to broadcast what they're doing. So you need this kind of like justice theater almost. Like you just put it on TV where you have some like theatrical court case or something, where you expose the people behind it and look at the people we're stopping and stuff to make people feel like something is being done about this, because just spending time sending mails back and forth to boomers who give away their credit info, it's like it's a total waste of their time too. They can't really do much about it. From a person who's like trained to do drive a cop car, put people in handcuffs, fill in paperwork, they're not going to be able to sit on their computers and follow up like money trails and stuff like that. It's just not possible.
Yeah. So what they've done is that they've set up their own sort of fraud division, right? And apparently the amount of messages to the police that count for this is something that is like large enough for them to establish their own sort of like a division. So they have 27 people who build, investigate, and coordinate efforts to combat this around the country as a whole. Because currently, if you report something as fraud, it goes to the local police chamber, as you said, people who are trained to catch people who steal bikes. So they're working on like a automatic system where it'll help you. You can report frauds, and it'll get put into the database, and they can use it for analysis to try to catch sort of like the larger organizations moving in the background, and try to get people's money back, I guess, or at least catch the criminals. Now, of course, as it turns out, a lot of this is coming from China, and the Chinese government has a statement, I believe, later in the article about they're willing to work with us to catch the criminals. But it's very difficult because it is like it's China, it's India, it's sometimes it's in the Emirates, I believe, or I believe the Emirates, or similar sort of like Saudi oil countries, but it'll still have either Indian or Chinese sort of like organizations running any scam or fraud operations. So I'm thinking, like, how do you really combat this, right? Like because this is like almost like information warfare in a sense, not just technological. Like it's brought on by technology, but it's much more like you can't really stop this, because as long as people are able to send you messages from China, right, or even through VPNs or whatever, people are going to try to scam you. And that's kind of like with Elon Musk pushing more of India onto Twitter or whatever he's done lately. Like, are you just going to get like a balkanization where like at some point people are saying, you know what, enough, we're just going to do our own internet?
That's probably one of the best things you can do. Is like, you just have an internet that just exists in your country, and like you have to have digital ID or something to access that internet and stay off the main streets. But if you have like the global open internet, then anybody from China, Russia, or something can reach you, right? And like they can make formal statements about, well, we're going to help you out, but sometimes it's state sanctioned as well. I know that like behind Israel, I think Russia also has some of the best hackers in the world, and they're more or less allowed a free reign as long as they are cooperative with the government, in a sense. Like they're sort of allowed to do crime against other countries, and they won't be extradited because it helps the hybrid warfare effort. In a sense, so diplomatically, you could say that, oh yeah, we're looking into it, or nothing is happening, or whatever. But it's only upsides for them. They're making it more expensive to live in the West, in a sense. Like stuff like this, insurance premiums go up. The money that you're spending on security, digital security goes up for companies. The cost of doing business goes up. So, and you're also allowing people to train themselves to hack people, that giving them skills that they can use to hack military applications later. So yeah, you might just have to have like your own internets where you do like China or something, where you have like the super apps and everything kind of remains within that space. And if you're brave, maybe you could venture onto the the World Wide Web. But if you're a boomer, maybe you're just served to stay within like
you're on
the Nordnet,
the approved internet. Yeah. I mean, that might just be it. Yeah, that's what we're looking at. Digital privateers. What are you gonna hire people, like there's gonna be bounties on scammers and stuff, or is it the other way around, where it's like you're just gonna hire hackers to attack other nations?
Well, yeah, you could do that as well. It's not going to make things cheaper for you, but you could try to allow people to scam people in China or something. But if they have locked down their internet, then what are you going to do? Like.
Yeah, exactly.
And they might also not even have any money. Like, I don't know about Chinese boomers. They have no money to spend. Like, they'd probably like to have a package or something, but they're saving 50% of their income.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting times ahead. So, I mean, we're certainly now spending a lot of money trying to stop this stuff, and I'm not sure if doing it this way long term is the way to go. With that, I think, I mean, do we want to talk about Macron? I don't want to talk about Macron. That's such like a non-issue.
Yeah, well, it was funny. I mean, you made the comment on Twitter that, what was it again? Like,
let me find the tweet. Hang on, I don't quite remember. Let's see here. Where is it? Macron caught on tape being married to a French woman was my comment to this.
Yeah, perfect.
And that seems to be it. I mean, Radio Genoa and all these people are like, wow, she's so old. And I mean, we know this. We've known this for a while. French people are weird. Yeah. He certainly did seem a bit upset about this. And, it's a blow to our little Napoleon's dreams of an EU army, I think, because it made him look kind of weak. But that being said, it's not really a big thing.
No, I don't think so either. I mean, but you have certain people who are just trying to pin every piece of shit they can on Macron. Like before this, it was like the quote unquote cocaine thing, where they had like tissues on the table or whatever, and they try to use the sort of like lighting or saturation filters to make it look like bags of coke. Like he can't catch a break, poor Macron. Not only he has to deal with like poor ratings domestically, but everybody else hates them as well.
All right. We've gone on for an hour and 15 minutes. I think that's enough for this episode of The Longhouse. Thank you, of course, everyone who watched us live. We always enjoy our listeners and our chatters who connect with us live. It's always great. We'll be back next week. As I said, going forward, we're looking at starting an hour later than we have been. So in Central Europe, that's at 9 p.m. instead of 8 p.m. So keep in mind that for next week. Ludwigpath, anything you want to say before we leave?
No, just thanks for tuning in. And we'll see you next week at 9 o'clock CET.
Yes. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
No.